At 1:04 in the morning, 7 shots rang out. Within seconds, a white Dodge Charger peeled out from the 3rd level of the parking garage and disappeared into the darkness. Maple Batalia was lying on the asphalt beside her car. 5 bullets hit her, 3 of them in the abdomen. Her head was a large kitchen knife, covered in blood, was found right next to her. She was still alive, but in critical condition. This happened on September 27, 2011, on the campus of Simon Fraser University in Surrey, British Columbia. The campus was still busy, even after midnight students studying, hanging out, just like living their normal lives. Just minutes before the shooting, Maple walked out of the library with 3 friends. She was laughing. Nothing felt off. Nothing seemed dangerous. A few minutes later, they went their separate ways. She headed toward her car, and right at that moment, the security camera on that level turned away. Her wallet was still there. Nothing had been taken. So, robbery? Investigators pretty much ruled that out almost immediately. By the next day, more than 50 officers were working the case. No witnesses from the parking lot came forward. There was only one man in a building across the street who heard the shots and saw a car speeding away. He couldn't make out the license plate, but he remembered the model and the direction it went. Maple was 19 years old. She was a university student with plans to apply to medical school. At the same time, she was acting in films and signed with a modeling agency. Her life was moving fast in a good way, but in the weeks leading up to her murder, there was another reality unfolding behind the scenes. Her ex-boyfriend, 20-year-old Gary, could not accept the breakup. From mid-August to the end of September, he made more than 2,000 phone calls and sent thousands of messages. One night alone, 300 calls. 300 in one night. That's not heartbreak anymore. That's obsession. He followed her. He involved his friends. Outside a club, he spat at her friend, punched a guy who was having coffee with her, and shoved Maple to the ground. He was arrested, charged with assault, and ordered to have no contact with her. 2 days before the murder, a close friend of his rented a white Dodge Charger. When the car was picked up, Gary was there. After the shooting, that car spent several hours at a car wash. Later, investigators found a shell casing under the hood, and it matched the ones recovered at the crime scene. Security cameras showed that same Charger entering the parking garage after 8 p.m. It circled for a long time before finally parking. Maple appears on camera. The car remains there until the moment the shots are fired. This didn't look random. Not even close. One question stays with us until the very end: who did this and why? Stay with us till the end of the video to find out, but first, let's go back a little. 19-year-old Maple Batalia was born near Mumbai, India, and later moved with her family to Surrey, the second largest city in the province of British Columbia, and one of the fastest growing cities in the Greater Vancouver area. Surrey is this interesting mix of modern city life and natural beauty. You've got a downtown core with high-rise buildings and universities, but at the same time, there are huge green spaces everywhere, urban forests, massive parks, walking trails. The Crescent Beach area is especially beautiful, known for its sandy shoreline and those like unreal sunset views over the water. The city is incredibly multicultural, with strong infrastructure and easy access to Vancouver, which makes it a really dynamic place to grow up. And hey, let me pause for just a second. I'm actually curious, what city are you watching this from? And what time is it where you are right now? Seriously, drop it in the comments. I'd love to see where everyone's tuning in from. I'll be reading through them. Her friends remembered her as warm, intelligent, ambitious, and incredibly driven. She was an honor student and dreamed of becoming a doctor. At the same time, she had this strong creative side. And it wasn't just a hobby, she was already starting to gain real momentum in the entertainment industry. While studying health sciences, she was also getting modeling and acting offers pretty regularly. She had a role in the 2010 film Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and she appeared in an episode of The Secret Circle that aired on the CW. She had signed with a modelling agency, and she was over the moon-like, truly on top of the world when she found out she was a finalist in the Central City model search. The head of her agency described her as exceptionally intelligent, very articulate, focused, and honestly one of the kindest people you could ever meet. She enrolled at Simon Fraser University, lived at home with her family, and commuted to campus every day. After graduation, she planned to apply to medical school. But she also admitted to friends that she was enjoying the wave of acting opportunities so much that she didn't want to completely rule it out as a long-term career. She was just figuring it out, and she had options. For someone her age, she was unbelievably busy. But she embraced every opportunity that came her way and somehow balanced it all: school, career, auditions, filming, like it was second nature. Maple had been in an on and off relationship for 4 years with 20-year-old Gajinder Dhaliwal, who everyone called Gary. In 2011, their relationship officially ended after Maple discovered he had cheated on her. The betrayal broke her heart. It really did, but she didn't let herself fall apart. She had too much going on, too many goals ahead of her, so she threw herself into work and school head first, trying to move forward. That evening, Maple left her family's home and headed to the campus library with a friend. They were planning one of those long, late-night study sessions, the kind where you tell yourself you'll just review a little, and then, hours go by. They also met up with a few other friends there. Time slipped away almost unnoticed, and when that pale, sleepless glow before sunrise started creeping in, they decided to call it a night. Maple hugged her friends goodbye and walked toward her car, which was parked on the 3rd level of the garage. A few minutes after 1 in the morning, a man living in a building across the street suddenly heard 7 loud bangs in rapid succession. Not fireworks, not a car backfiring, 7 sharp shots. He ran to the window and saw a white Dodge Charger screeching out of the parking structure, tires grinding against the pavement as it sped away. People began running outside. Phones came out. Calls to 911 started flooding in. Maple was lying on the ground beside her car, surrounded by pools of blood. She had been shot 5 times. 3 of those bullets struck her abdomen. Her head was covered in multiple stab wounds and deep cuts. A large kitchen knife, covered in blood, was lying nearby. She was still alive, but barely holding on. Law enforcement officers, who had already received dozens of reports about the gunshots, arrived within minutes. They worked on her at the scene, trying to stabilize her long enough to transport her. She was rushed to a local hospital, but her injuries were just too severe. A few hours later, she was gone.
Shots fired here at this area on the 3rd floor of this parkade. Uniformed officers attended, and they did locate an adult female, 19 years of age, located here behind me, suffering from what can only be described as significant and multiple gunshot wounds. Those 2 uniformed officers did everything they could in an effort to save this young lady's life while they waited for AHS to attend. We understand the sensitivity here in regards to what the community is feeling and where this occurred, how it may have occurred, and whether there's a link specifically to the SFU campus here. I can confirm that yes, there is a link to the SFU campus in that this 19-year-old girl was an active student here at this campus.
This violent attack felt even more shocking because of where it happened. An open space, a public area, a university parking garage that, even that late at night, was still fairly busy. Surveillance cameras showed that plenty of students were doing exactly what Maple had been doing, walking out of the library, heading back to their cars, rushing home after studying. It was just a normal college night, Nothing unusual, nothing that hinted at what was about to happen. And that's what made it hit even harder. This wasn't some deserted alley. It wasn't an isolated spot off campus. This was a place where people were walking around, where the lights were on, where cameras were running. And yet, despite all those people nearby, there wasn't a single witness on the third level of the parking garage. No one who actually saw the moment the shots were fired. No voice that could clearly describe what happened in those critical seconds. The area was full of students, but at that exact place, at that exact time, it was like there was this sudden, chilling emptiness. Fear moved fast across campus. By the very next day, 50 officers were assigned to the case. This was a major mobilization. Patrols increased. Surveillance footage was reviewed again and again. Students, faculty, nearby residents, everyone was questioned. The atmosphere changed. You could feel the tension in the air. Investigators were careful about what they shared publicly. They kept a lot of details within their team. At the same time, they admitted something important. There was less evidence than they would have liked. At that point, they couldn't confidently say whether the attack was random or targeted. Both possibilities were still on the table. And honestly, that uncertainty, that's what scared people the most. Maple's wallet was found next to her. Everything was still inside. Nothing was missing. That seemed to rule out robbery. The motive looked like something else. Detectives also noted that the shooting most likely was not gang-related, but they didn't have absolute certainty. Without the weapon and without direct witnesses, it was too early to draw final conclusions. Law enforcement tried to reassure students. They emphasized that campus remained safe. They stressed that this appeared to be an isolated incident, not an ongoing threat. One detective said, essentially, aside from the fact that this homicide happened near the Simon Fraser University campus, they did not believe that the student community or university leadership needed to be overly concerned. Those words were meant to calm people down. But for many students, the night didn't feel the same anymore.
Dozens of RCMP officers are investigating yesterday's shocking shooting of a 19-year-old SFU student.
Well, Tony, 40 to 50 officers are now on the case here at SFU, a case that some say is hitting investigators very hard. Many of them have daughters, and that's motivating them to find the killer. Grief is the focus at Maple Batalia's family home today, although no doubt there are many questions. Why would someone shoot the young woman several times as she made her way to her car after a late night of studying?
Who would be capable of killing such a beautiful young 19-year-old girl in the prime of her life? Did this 19-year-old young woman know her attacker? Or was there somebody involved in regards to this that she knew that assisted in this homicide? We don't have those answers.
Students are more careful since the killing, sticking closer together.
So we kind of walk together, but ever since this incident, we felt like we are more inclined to do so now.
With tears in his eyes, a university representative announced that the school would be providing counseling services to anyone who needed support, and that they would continue offering that help for as long as it took. Vigils were held. Students, faculty, friends, they came together in shared grief. The community stood side by side, trying to process what had happened, trying to support one another through something that just felt impossible to understand.
It makes you angry in a way that she was just footsteps away from her car. It was just right there, and it just makes you it's like a big shock.
The Integrated Homicide Investigation Team continues to investigate tips in this murder case, but so far no one has been arrested. Officers know there are still people out there in the community who have vital information, and they're pleading with them to come forward.
Just help us get our justice that we deserve. And no daughter, no sister deserves to go through what my sister went through. She was innocent. And for you to stay quiet, it's not the right thing.
Maple's family told investigators they could think of only one person who might have had a motive to hurt her ex-boyfriend, 20-year-old Gary. Even for them, though, the idea that he could have gone as far as killing her was almost impossible to process. It just didn't feel real. Their relationship had started back in high school and had always been unstable. There were arguments, breakups, getting back together, that kind of cycle. But after the final split in the fall of 2011, Gary's behavior became deeply concerning. Her family told police that from mid-August to the end of September 2011, things escalated into what they described as a frightening campaign of harassment and stalking. Gary made more than 2,000 phone calls to Maple and sent even more text messages. One night, while she was out at a club with a friend, he sent her 300 messages. 300 in a single night. That's not just jealousy, that's fixation. He started following her. And not only that, he reportedly asked his friends to keep tabs on her too, to find out where she was and who she was with. Outside one club, he spat at Maple's friend. He punched another guy after learning he had been having coffee with her. When Maple tried to step in, he shoved her to the ground. She went to the police. He was arrested, charged with assault, and ordered to have no contact with her. The friend he punched was actually one of the people studying with Maple in the library that night. Still, without witnesses and without direct proof that Gary had been on campus that night, investigators had very little to go on. Formally speaking, no video placing him there, no confirmation of his physical presence, just suspicion, and this growing tension while they waited for some kind of break. The crime itself was clear, but the threads that could tie it to a specific person? They were frayed. Almost invisible. However, detectives did have one key piece of information. One witness. The resident who had looked out his window that night gave a very precise description of the vehicle believed to be the getaway car. It was just a brief glimpse, a silhouette in the dark, headlights cutting through the night. But there were enough details to form a clear picture. He saw the car speed away around 1:04 in the morning. A sudden launch. Urgency. That unmistakable sound of hard acceleration. He could even name the street the car turned onto. What he couldn't see was the license plate. The darkness and the speed made sure of that. So the plate number was unknown, but the investigation didn't stop there. Thanks to surveillance cameras, detectives were able to rewind the night. The campus was well covered, nearly 100 high-quality cameras, which meant the night wasn't truly lost to darkness. It was captured in fragments, angles, timestamps. Investigators released portions of the footage and asked anyone who appeared in the recordings to come forward with information, even small details, even something that seemed insignificant. Because sometimes, it's that tiny piece that stitches the whole picture back together. Reviewing footage from other cameras, detectives easily identified Maple inside the library with her friends. She was smiling, laughing, working. There was no sign of stress or fear in her body language. Nothing that suggested someone was watching her. She looked calm, focused, confident exactly how her loved ones described her. No warning signs. Shortly before 1 in the morning, Maple and 3 friends left the library together. There was no audio, but their body language said enough. They walked side by side. Everything appeared normal. Maple seemed relaxed. There was absolutely nothing to indicate that within minutes, everything would change forever. University staff helped identify the people who had been with her that evening. They all voluntarily gave statements. Their timelines were checked carefully, methodically. Police cleared them as suspects. It turned out they had gone separate ways just minutes before the shots were fired. Minutes. Just a handful of steps. The camera on the 3rd level of the parking garage operated on a timer. It slowly scanned the area every few minutes, methodically sweeping the space. And here's the tragic detail: at the exact moment Maple entered that level, the camera turned away from the entrance. The lens was pointed in the opposite direction. During that critical window, nothing was recorded. But other footage revealed something important. That same white car entered the parking structure just after 8 prime ends, hours before the shooting. It circled for a long time before parking, not the way a typical driver would. It looked like it was waiting, watching, and then Maple and her friend appear on camera. Their movement is captured at the same time the vehicle is present in the garage. The timing feels way too precise to be random. It became clear that whoever was inside that car knew Maple would be there that night. He arrived early, waited, tracked her movements. This didn't look like a spur-of-the-moment act or some unexpected encounter. This looked calculated. This was not spontaneous. This was a carefully, methodically planned murder.
We begin with an emotional vigil in Surrey tonight. More than 100 people held an event to remember Maple Batalia. It's been a year since she was shot to death, but no one has been arrested.
We know that in a year's time, people will talk. We believe that people have talked about this murder and that may have more information than what they initially had in the beginning stages, and we want those people to come forward, the people that have the intimate knowledge about her homicide.
We always love our angel.
It never changed.
And for that person to be out there and be free, and my sister will never come back, it's just not right.
By that point, it was already 2012, and investigators were still working relentlessly on Maple's case. But even after months of effort, there simply wasn't enough evidence to make an arrest. For several months, the investigative team carefully cross-checked records of everyone in the area who owned or had rented a vehicle matching the same make and model as the suspected car. One by one, people were interviewed, names were reviewed, alibis were verified, and little by little, those who had no connection were ruled out. Finally, toward the end of 2012, a link emerged. The name Gersamar Betty surfaced in connection with one of those vehicles. He was a close friend of Gary's and a student at the same university. And suddenly, what had felt like scattered pieces of a puzzle started to come together. He had rented a white Dodge Charger and returned it shortly after September 28th. On paper, the rental date looked routine, just another transaction, another signature on a form. But that brief window of time turned out to be critical. The car was taken, used, and brought back as if nothing had happened. From the outside, it all seemed ordinary. But behind the scenes, a very different story was unfolding. When he picked up the vehicle, Gary was right there with him. They were seen together. This wasn't some random overlap or quick coincidence. Gary's presence at the moment the car was rented became a detail investigators would later examine very closely. That white sports sedan, just a rental on record, was now starting to look like a key link in a chain of events. 21-year-old Gersamar also spent several hours at a car wash shortly after Maple was shot. Police were eventually able to locate the vehicle. That alone was a major breakthrough. And even though it had been washed, even though someone had clearly tried to make it spotless, investigators found a shell casing under the hood, a small metallic detail that had been missed during the cleaning. Forensic experts confirmed that it matched the casings recovered at the crime scene. It was a cold, technical match, no emotion, just science. But that match connected the car directly to the shooting scene, and in that moment, the white Dodge Charger stopped being just transportation. It became evidence. It became a piece of the puzzle that was finally starting to lock into place. More than a year had passed since Maple was killed, when law enforcement finally made an announcement.
Maple Batalia was gunned down on a university campus in September 2011. And since then, she, her family and friends have appealed to the public to help find her killers. Now, police have arrested her ex-boyfriend and another man. The CBC's Dan Burrett has that story.
Maple Batalia's father, Harry, vowed to wear black until he received justice for his daughter's murder. His family joined him in black and a little closer to justice, now that two men have been charged in the death of their daughter and sister.
This isn't an easy day for us. It's very bittersweet, but although we can't bring Maple back, we're happy to see that the people that are responsible for this are now going to suffer the consequences.
I can tell you that I knew this day would come. I knew that to be true because I know that every day we commit to ensuring the justice and the rule of law prevails.
Maple's ex-boyfriend, Gary, was charged with first-degree murder, the most serious charge under the law, meaning it involved intent and premeditation. The wording sounded cold and technical, almost clinical. But behind those legal terms was a tragedy that had shaken an entire family and an entire community. His friend, Gersamar, was charged with second-degree murder and being an accessory after the fact. Investigators believed he wasn't just some bystander who happened to know something. They believed he played an active role in the events leading up to and following that fatal moment. The charges made it clear responsibility didn't rest on one person alone. According to investigators, Gersamar had been watching Maple's car for several days before the murder. This wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. It was described as deliberate surveillance. For days, her movements were tracked. After the shooting, prosecutors alleged that he helped Gary flee the scene, a fast decision made in an intense moment when every minute counted. The car was later taken to a car wash, an apparent attempt to remove potential evidence, to wipe away traces. And it didn't stop there. For months afterward, he allegedly provided Gary with an alibi, trying to create the appearance that he had nothing to do with it. The gun used in the murder was never recovered, and that missing weapon left a heavy shadow over the case. It meant one of the most critical pieces of physical evidence had vanished. Investigators described Gary as furious that Maple was moving on without him. She was meeting new people, making plans, achieving things. Her life was progressing, and he was no longer part of it. For someone who had already shown jealousy, insecurity, and possessiveness, that loss of control hit hard. The idea that she no longer answered to him, that she had chosen her own path, seemed unbearable. Her family said he carried a belief that if he couldn't have her, no one would. And this wasn't just something said in the heat of the moment. It was described as a mindset that slowly turned into a threat. He tried to force the relationship back on her, to strip away her right to walk away, to limit her freedom of choice. And in the end, that need for control reached its most devastating conclusion. He took her life.
And she's very happy when she break up with him. It's hard, but she said, I try my best, no more. Maple friend Kiran, she told me, Gary kill Maple. I said, bye. But she did. Then the same time I call Gary mom, because she is my friend. I said, your dog killed my daughter. That's why I have message to people. If your son or daughter controlling someone, please help.
It was nearly 2.5 years ago when 19-year-old Maple Batalia was fatally gunned down in Surrey. Her ex-boyfriend has now been ordered to stand trial.
Both men appeared in court, silent, composed, and entered pleas of not guilty. They were scheduled to be tried together, but the trial didn't begin right away. It kept getting delayed, postponed, rescheduled, again and again. And just like that, 4 more long years passed. 4 years of waiting. 4 years for Maple's family. 4 years where the case just kind of hovered in this painful limbo, with answers technically coming, but never quite arriving.
It's too much hard for us. A long wait. It's gone more than 4.5 days now. And now, every day we think, what will happen?
Just before the trial was set to begin in 2016, Gary, who was 26 years old at the time, suddenly changed his position. Up until that point, he had denied responsibility. But right before the hearings were about to start, he entered a guilty plea to second-degree murder. The statement in court was short, formal, almost emotionless. But the consequences were final. That decision meant there would be no full trial, no lengthy presentation of evidence before a jury. At the same time, it was a definitive, legal admission of what he had done. He was sentenced to life in prison with no eligibility for parole for 21 years. Life sentence sounds absolute, harsh, final. But in practical terms, The key number was 21 years. That was the minimum amount of time he must serve before he can even apply for parole. Until then, there are no applications, no reviews, no early release, nothing. The judge had the authority to set the parole ineligibility period anywhere between 10 and 25 years. So 21 years sits near the upper end of that range. It wasn't the absolute maximum, but it was significantly higher than what's often imposed in similar cases. The prosecutor emphasized that this was one of the harshest sentences ever handed down to someone convicted of killing a single person, and that wasn't exaggeration. It reflected how seriously the court viewed the crime. The punishment chosen was close to the strictest allowed under the law. For those sitting in the courtroom, the sentence felt like the final chapter of a long, painful process. But even a severe sentence couldn't change the most important reality: what had happened and who could never be brought back.
Rosie Batalia leaves court with the sense of closure she sought for more than 4 years.
Thank you to the community members, friends, family who have supported us endlessly through this process. It's been a really long time, and Maple can finally rest in peace knowing that she got some justice. And we just want this to be an example in the community that no matter what you do, it does catch up to you, and justice must be served. And I'm just hoping that she's looking down and is content that she finally got that justice.
There's finality for this family. It's over. There are no appeals. There is no possibility of a new trial being ordered. It's over. It's done with respect to Mr. Dhaliwal, and that is to the benefit of the family.
27-year-old Gesama Betty was later found not guilty of second-degree murder, but guilty of being an accessory after the fact. In other words, the court determined that he wasn't legally responsible for the killing itself, but that he had helped after the crime was committed. He was sentenced to 22 months in prison. However, he was released 6 months before completing that term.
Family of Maple Batalia, one of the 2 men involved in her high-profile 2011 murder, has been released from jail.
He was released early. And for a family already living with permanent loss, that decision felt like another blow. Maple's sister later said he served only 18 months, just a year and a half for a life that will never come back. To the family, those numbers didn't feel like justice. They felt like a technicality, a cold calculation that didn't reflect the depth of what had been taken from them. She said that during sentencing, he had the audacity to remain silent and even smile at them, smile at others in the courtroom, almost as if he wanted to send a message that he had gotten away with it. That smile stayed with them longer than any spoken word. The courtroom was quiet that day. But it wasn't a comforting silence. It was heavy, pressing. The family stood there facing someone connected to the destruction of their world. And instead of remorse, they saw what felt like confidence, detachment. That moment became another painful memory layered on top of everything else. It took 5 years for Maple's family to see any form of legal resolution. 5 long years of hearings, waiting, hoping the system would fully acknowledge the magnitude of their loss. But even when the verdicts came, justice didn't bring peace. It didn't bring Maple back. It didn't fill the emptiness. In Surrey, the impact of her death still lingers in memories, in quiet conversations, in a grief that hasn't faded with time. In 2017, a documentary about Maple was released. The film not only told her story, it went on to receive several awards at major festivals, bringing wider attention to the tragedy. Director Jocelyn Corrie said she wanted the film to serve as a memorial, a living tribute to who Maple really was. It was also an effort to speak openly about intimate partner violence, an issue that too often stays hidden until it's too late. In addition, the Maple Batalia Memorial Scholarship for the Arts was established. It's an annual scholarship for a young South Asian Canadian woman beginning her journey in the fields of art and design. It became a way to preserve Maple's name not only in memory, but in opportunity, a way to turn pain into support, a way to help someone else chase the kind of dream Maple herself was just beginning to build.
Member for Surrey Wally.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Last Saturday, March the 4th, a candlelight vigil took place at Holland Park in Surrey Wally to honor victims of domestic violence. One of the very poignant stories recounted was that of Maple Batalia. Mabel was an extraordinary and vibrant young woman, an SFU student and also an aspiring actress and model. The Batalia family has responded to the tragedy in a strong and resilient way. And to honor Maple's legacy, the Batalia family has established a bursary to support students in SFU's Health Science Department. Her mother, Sarjeet, told me on Saturday that as a result of her work, the fund now exceeds $100,000. And a separate Maple Batalia Memorial Scholarship for the Arts was also established in partnership with Emily Carr, University of Art and Design. Even after her death, her legacy goes on.
At 19 years old, Maple had already achieved things many people only dream about. She was moving forward with confidence, working hard, pushing through obstacles without slowing down. There was this combination in her ambition and a rare inner strength. You could feel it even in the small things. The way she spoke, the way she carried herself, the way she showed up for other people. And honestly, knowing her drive and that light she seemed to carry inside, it's hard not to believe she had so much more ahead of her. No matter which path she chose, medicine, acting, modeling, she would have succeeded. Everyone who knew her felt that. One of her closest friends said that Maple's death was like crushing a flower before it had the chance to bloom. A flower that was just gaining strength, just getting ready to show the world who she was. The words were simple, no dramatic language, but the pain behind them filled the room. It wasn't just the loss of a person, it was the loss of possibility, the loss of a future, the loss of a life that was only beginning. Her father called her his most precious treasure. By then, there was no restraint left in his voice, just exhaustion and heartbreak. He admitted that his life now feels completely empty, like someone took away the very meaning of it. The house grew quiet, in a way it had never been before. Everything was still in its place, but without her, none of it meant the same thing. He said, "We are left with nothing. We lost our angel, and she is not coming back." There was no anger in those words, just acceptance of something irreversible, a pain that doesn't have a scale. He also shared that even though Maple was the youngest in the family, she was always the one who held everyone together. She was the first to call, the one who made peace after arguments, the one who found words when everyone else fell silent. She brought the family to the same table, reminded them what mattered, pulled them back together when it felt like everyone was drifting apart. And now that thread, the one that kept them connected, was gone. Thank you all for watching. Truly. I hope this story stayed with you and made you pause for a second, made you think about how fragile life really is, and about the people around you right now. Because sometimes we don't realize what we have until it's just gone.